Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're diving into what I like to call a real-life geological detective story. We are investigating the sudden, absolutely violent awakening of a dormant volcano, and we're going to see what this massive explosion actually reveals about the very ground beneath our feet. Because as you'll see, an isolated eruption over in Africa is actually a glaring symptom of a massive planetary shift. It's literally rewriting the map of the world as we know it. Our story starts on November 23rd in Ethiopia. Out of absolutely nowhere, this terrifying volcanic explosion just shatters the landscape. And I mean, this eruption was so incredibly sudden, and the sheer force was so powerful that locals living miles and miles away reported it sounded exactly like a bomb going off. But it wasn't just loud, right? It was visibly colossal. It instantly launched an astonishingly massive ash cloud 50,000 feet into the air. We're talking about a towering plume of devastation so huge it was easily visible from space. Okay, let's dive into this. Because what makes this specific eruption so completely monumental is the actual history of the mountain itself. This is the Haile Gubbi volcano, and before that random November day, this giant had been asleep for a very, very long time. In fact, this was the very first time in recorded history, a staggering 12,000 years, that Haile Gubbi had erupted. That's a slumber of 12 millennia, just totally broken in a single explosive instant. Which brings us to part one, the global ash threat. See, while this eruption happened in a very specific corner of Ethiopia, the immediate fallout definitely did not stay local. We can literally trace the dangerous path of this 50,000-foot ash cloud. Pushed by atmospheric winds, it first flowed right into Oman and Yemen. Then, from the Middle East, it drifted relentlessly eastward, eventually blanketing the skies over Pakistan and India. And the threat got so severe that a ton of flights had to be completely canceled in Delhi. The cloud didn't even stop there. It just kept slowly making its way further east toward China and Myanmar, just completely wrecking global travel patterns along the way. So the crucial point is exactly why airlines take this so incredibly seriously. I mean, volcanic ash isn't just, soft smoke or normal dust. It is highly, highly abrasive. This cloud is packed with these microscopic bits of jagged rocks, razor-sharp glass particles, and hard crystals. If a jet flies through that, those particles get sucked straight into the engines, they melt, and they fuse together. That can easily shut an entire engine down mid-flight. Plus, it acts exactly like flying sandpaper. If this stuff hits the cockpit windows at high speed, it heavily scratches the glass, literally sanding it down until the pilots are completely blinded and can't see a thing ahead of them. All right, moving on to part two, the alien Danakil Depression. Now, while the skies above were just descending into total chaos and shutting down flight routes everywhere, the reality directly down on the ground provides this really surreal contrast. What I find so absolutely fascinating about the Haile Gubbi eruption is the paradox of where it actually happened. The explosion was so violently loud that people in cities 190 kilometers away heard it. It even sent physical earthquake shockwaves all the way into neighboring Djibouti. And just 28 kilometers away, the Afdera region of Ethiopia saw several of its villages completely buried in ash. Yet, remarkably, there was zero human casualties. How is that possible? Well, it's because this unimaginably powerful event took place in literally one of the most remote, uninhabited deserts on the entire planet. This region is famously known as the Danakil Depression, and let me tell you, it is a place of brutal, unrelenting extremes. It sits deep below sea level, it gets next to no rain whatsoever, but what truly defines this place is the heat. It is widely considered to be the hottest place on Earth. We're talking temperatures that frequently soar past 50 to a blistering 55 degrees Celsius. It's an incredibly harsh environment that makes everyday human survival pretty much impossible. But despite it being so unbelievably hostile to human life, the Danakil Depression is this massive magnet for geologists and adventurous tourists. Because it's so geologically active, packed with all these different volcanoes, the landscape is just utterly surreal. You have these intense chemical reactions bubbling right up from the earth, and they literally paint the ground in these vibrant, glowing yellows, greens, and blues. It looks totally alien. Seriously, it's like looking at the surface of another planet, but it's right here on Earth. But looking at this vibrant, alien landscape brings us right back to the central mystery of our explainer today. Why now? What unseen forces actually caused a mountain that had been dead quiet for 12,000 years to just suddenly rip open and throw ash into the stratosphere? Well, the answer to that is much, much bigger than a single volcano. Which leads us to part three, Africa is splitting apart. To really understand Haley Guba's sudden awakening, we have to look at a staggering planetary scale event occurring right beneath it. The African continent is fundamentally breaking apart in two. And this brilliantly illustrates the grand scale of Earth's history just repeating itself. Millions of years ago, right, we had the supercontinent Pangaea. As that broke apart, the African tectonic plate and the Arabian tectonic plate, which used to be joined together, slowly separated. That ancient rift filled with water and actually became the Red Sea and the Gulf of Eden. Today, because tectonic plates are in constant motion, we are seeing the exact same process happen all over again. The African plate itself is now actively dividing into two brand new, distinct pieces, the Nubian plate and the Somali plate. Let's look closely at the mechanical forces directly beneath the Haley Guba volcano. This specific area is known as a triple junction. You basically have three massive puzzle pieces of the Earth's crust, the Arabian plate, the Nubian plate, and the Somali plate, and they are all intersecting right here. And all three of them are slowly, relentlessly pulling away from one another. This immense subterranean stretching is physically tearing the ground open, creating what geologists call the Afar Rift. And the Afar Rift is really just the starting point. If we zoom out to a macro level, this localized volcanic event maps onto a structural fault line of just mind-boggling proportions. This tear, which is known as the East African Rift, is a massive 6,000-kilometer-long line. It stretches all the way from the Red Sea, passes through Ethiopia, runs down through Kenya, Tanzania, Malawi, and finally ends in Mozambique. This massive line is the exact seam where the continent is quite literally unzipping. And because of this, scientists stress that the sudden eruption of Haley Guba isn't actually unexpected at all. In fact, this enormous 6,000-kilometer tear in the Earth's crust is the ongoing creator of some of Africa's most iconic geological landmarks. As these plates pull apart, magma rises up and water fills in the gaps. This very rift system is responsible for creating Mount Kilimanjaro, Mount Kenya, Ethiopia's famous Erta Ale lava lake, as well as these massive, deep bodies of water like Lake Malawi, Lake Tanganyika, Lake Albert, and Lake Kivu. Now, what's really interesting here is the speed at which this incredible continent-altering event is actually happening. These massive continental plates are pulling away from each other at a rate of just 2 to 5 centimeters per year. It is a slow, creeping, almost completely imperceptible separation. To put that into a relatable human perspective, 2 to 5 centimeters a year is the exact same rate at which your fingernails grow. So as you sit here listening to this explainer, the entire continent of Africa is literally tearing itself in two at the very same speed your nails are extending from your fingers. It's just a wild testament to the immense, slow-moving power of geological time. And because it's happening at this super steady fingernail growth pace, the final result is still incredibly far away from our perspective. Geologists and scientists predict that it will take anywhere between 5 to 10 million years for the African continent to completely and fully break apart. When it does, it'll eventually allow the ocean to just flood right in and create a brand new sea where land once stood. But you gotta remember, while the overarching process takes millions of years, it is sharply punctuated by sudden, highly violent symptoms. Just because the plates move slowly definitely doesn't mean the surface is quiet. For example, back in 2005, a massive 60-kilometer-long fissure suddenly ripped open in the Ethiopian region in just 10 days. Fast forward to July of 2025, and the nearby Ertal Al volcano erupted, while white smoke ominously began rising from Haley Guba. Scientists watched all this really closely, and then, sure enough, in November 2025, Haley Guba just completely exploded. So the core takeaway from all this incredible data is beautifully summarized by this one thought. We are literally seeing a continent break apart in real time. The flight cancellations over in Delhi, the ash covering Ethiopian villages, those crazy alien landscapes of the Danakil Depression, these aren't just random, isolated incidents. They are the highly visible growing pains of a constantly changing, dynamic planet that is actively reshaping its own surface. Which brings us to a final thought to leave you with today. We've seen how a 12,000-year-old dormant volcano can suddenly shatter the sky, entirely driven by forces that are moving just centimeters a year. So as you look down at your own hands and you consider that the Earth is fundamentally shifting beneath your feet at the exact same speed your fingernails grow, what ancient sleeping giant will the Earth wake up next? Definitely keep that in mind the next time you think the ground beneath you is standing still. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep your eyes open because our planet is always on the move.